Good evening and welcome to the 2017 October edition of League of Women Voters Presents. It's your monthly public affairs show that delves into issues that are important to Mid-Missouri and beyond. And tonight we're going to talk about an election that's coming up and a issue that is what you're going to be voting on, which is a use tax. And we're going to explain what a use tax is and why it's important, and hopefully give you enough information to cast your ballot. So my name is Randy Picht, and I am the Executive Director of the Donald W. Reynolds Journalism Institute, and I'm filling in for your regular host, Jim Robertson. So let me introduce our two panelists today who are going to explain this issue. On my immediate right is Stephen Sapp, who's Community Relations Director for the City of Columbia. And next to him is Fred Parry, who's a Boone County Commissioner. Thank you. So let's talk about the use tax. First, let's explain when the election is and how that came about. And maybe, Stephen, if you want to start.
Well, the ballot will be placed before the voters on Tuesday, November 7th.
Okay.
And they will see in Boone County and Columbia a single issue ballot, if you will. So it will be just the use tax is the only thing on this ballot. The important thing probably for people living inside the city limits of Columbia to understand is that they're going to see two ballot issues. So there's Proposition 1, which is for the City of Columbia, and then there's Proposition U, which is for the County of Boone. If you live outside of the city limits, you'll see only Proposition U. So those inside the city limits, it's not a mistake. There are two ballot issues because Columbia residents are also part of the county. They need to vote on each question.
Okay.
County residents, of course, not living in the city, just need to vote on the one question. So I think that's something we just don't want people to get confused about in the ballot box, is that why are there two if I live inside the city? So Proposition 1 and Proposition U is the question. And the question will be asked is, shall the City of Columbia or shall the County of Boone impose a use tax on internet purchases or e-commerce purchases equal to the existing sales tax rate, which for the city is 2%, and for the county it's 1.75%.
Okay.
So that's the basics behind the question on the ballot, Proposition 1 and Proposition U.
Okay, and so Fred, why do we have to do this? I mean, why isn't this a broader question, or maybe you can explain why this is coming up now?
Sure. I want to add real quick to Steve's comments that your viewers in the town of Harrisburg and the city of Ashland will also see a use tax proposal on their ballots as well.
So they'll have two.
Yeah, they'll have a county and a city issue as well. So look for that. But going back to 1995 is really the year that the internet took off, and people started to sort of discover all the things that were on the World Wide Web, and unfortunately they discovered the convenience of shopping as well. And so that has really affected the retail shopping trends. We both of our governments, the city and the county, rely heavily on sales tax revenues. That's just something that our forefathers decided was the best way to fund the important services that we provide for our citizens. And it's a great thing, but unfortunately sales tax trends have changed dramatically over the last 20 years. And so we have seen a reduction in the growth of sales tax in both the city and the county. And, for example, our population back in 2004, I believe, was in the county was about 105,000 people. Today it's 176,000 people. And so there has been significant growth in the population, but the growth of sales tax revenue just has simply not kept up with that. And so as your population grows, you have a greater need for more fire protection, you have a greater need for more police protection, and just the services that you come to expect and sometimes even take for granted that are provided by the city and the county. And so that growth has not kept up with our needs, unfortunately.
And I guess the idea there is before 95, population growth and sales tax growth went hand in hand. Yeah. You had more people, they bought more stuff, and therefore you always kept pace.
Yeah, that was a fairly reliable trend. Yeah.
But all of a sudden, something got in the way.
Right. It changed our business model, and
Okay.
so it's taken us a while to respond to that. But I think that one of the things that we have seen as a community, it's fairly evident the impact that online shopping has had on our downtown businesses, the brick and mortar mom and pop shops that we see. A lot more people are buying from the online retailers like Amazon.com and Overstock.com, and that it's hard to beat the convenience and the selection of doing that. If you don't need a lot of personal service, a lot of people have just found it's much easier to do this online. And so because that's changed, we've had to deal with this revenue issue. And so the use tax is something that has been passed by every county surrounding Boone County, with the exception of Audrin County already. Callaway County right now is currently collecting a little bit over $30,000 every month on average. And so really the Columbia economy is really 10 times the size of Callaway's economy. And so we think that this use tax would allow the city to gain conservatively another $1 million in sales tax revenue over the course of a year, about $900,000 for the county. And so that really will help us meet some unmet needs in our community. And of course, public safety is something that's really on the forefront of people's minds. I would imagine that both of us, both the city and the county, will try to meet some of those unmet needs. That's one of the many uses that we'll come up with for the new revenue.
Mm-hmm. So really, there's two issues. One is that the governments will get more money so they can provide the services that a growing population expects and needs to some extent. And the other issue is a little bit more complicated because it's actually an issue to help the businesses that people maybe visit all the time, but they have other options now, and other people are taking advantage of those options, and those businesses are struggling. And maybe while you want to make sure we have police and fire services, you also want to make sure maybe we have some stores to go in.
Right, and so what this does also is it levels the playing field, if you will. And I think a good example might be if we look back about a year ago, a little over a year ago, in August of 2016, both the city of Columbia and the county of Boone put a very similar question on a use tax to voters, but it had to deal with the out-of-state purchase of cars, boats, trailers, and outboard motors. So people could go out of state and purchase those items, and then if they brought them back into Missouri and used them there, they would forego paying the typical sales tax on that. So the use tax was enacted to make sure that we didn't have that leakage, and that in turn leveled the playing field for the auto dealerships, for the boat dealerships, and so forth here in the city of Columbia and county of Boone. So it's a very similar issue to that. We're not double taxing. We're not collecting both a sales tax and a use tax on a purchase. You will never pay both. The sales tax is what is collected if the business has a nexus or a connection to the state of Missouri. So for example, J.C. Penney, all probably shop there. If we go to the store, we pay a sales tax. But because they have a nexus, because they have a connection, they have stores within the state of Missouri, if you were to buy something from J.C. Penney online, you're going to pay a sales tax. You're going to pay the 1.75% county, the 2% city, and the 4.225% state. If you went to an online outlet, for example, I don't believe there are any Bloomingdale connections to the state of Missouri. So if you went to Bloomingdale's online and you purchased something from there, you would not have to pay a sales tax. You would pay a use tax. It would be the same, 1.75% county, 2% city. And because the state of Missouri already has a use tax, you should be paying the use tax already of 4.225% on any purchases that don't, from a company that don't have a nexus to the state of Missouri.
So now that's a good question. Why is it that, again, we have to do it if the state has it and other counties are, I mean, shouldn't it be a statewide, like everybody, it applies to everybody?
It really should be a federal. It
Oh,
really should be
okay.
nationwide. And for many years, there was the Marketplace Fairness Act. It's been shortened to the Main Street Finance Act now. And so what that would do is it would really at a national level say, you know, everybody's got to collect the appropriate use tax or sales tax for online purchases. We have lobbied through the City of Columbia to our representatives in the Senate and the House. I believe the county has done the same thing. So, you know, it's something that we're starting to see more and more cities, counties, and states taking a much harder look at. But right now, it's really just a Band-Aid approach. And so each city, each county, we have to pass it on its own within those areas just to enact it. So our hope is that someday it'll happen on a national level.
Yeah, okay, so, but you can't wait forever.
That's correct. That's correct.
So, you know, and I'm sure there's people that are watching that just don't like taxes.
Sure.
Don't like taxes at all. So what happens if it fails, if the proposition fails, or, you know, go back to the drawing board, or?
Well, unfortunately, we will continue to leave money laying on the table. And I think one of the reasons that we are acting now is that in April of this year, as a result of some litigation, Amazon announced that any community or county in the state of Missouri who has a use tax on the books, they would start paying a use tax on any purchases made in the state. Even though I guess they still don't have a nexus in the state, but they have agreed that they will pay that use tax. Amazon.com accounts for about 43% of all online purchases made in the state. So really, in our minds, that is a low-hanging fruit.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily require an honor system. This is something that a company has committed to do in our community. We think there's a very good possibility that the other major online retailers will follow suit. We hope that they do. But you know, we want voters to give their city government and their county government one more tool to fund the services that we provide. Other communities, every county, as I said, surrounding Boone County, except Audrain, is using this tool to fund their government. And I know that people in Boone County and Columbia love their community, and they're very proud of their community, and they recognize the fact that we have a superior quality of life, tremendous amenities that are provided by our local governments. And so to help us maintain that, we hope that voters will say, yeah, this is really a no-brainer for us. This is, yes, I don't like paying more taxes, but if Amazon is willing to collect taxes, and if this gives a leg up or levels the playing field for local merchants, then I want to support it. You know, it's the local merchants who really contribute in many ways to our quality of life. They sponsor our Little League teams, they sponsor the symphony, the ballet. You don't see Amazon.com on those programs. You don't see their names on the back of T-shirts. Really, we have a tremendous quality of life in Columbia and Boone County because of these local business owners and who are patrons of the arts and community boosters. And so we hope that this is a very simple decision for voters. There's no trickery involved. You can get into the weeds on this issue. There are complexities that have us scratching our heads, but in the grand scheme of things, we feel very confident that this is going to be a nice boost for our communities if the voters will support it.
Okay. And then just not to get into the weeds, but how does it actually work? I mean, if I go to Amazon.com, all that will happen is they will add a tax, and if my purchase is $50, I'll end up paying $51 or whatever, right?
Sure.
Then Amazon will send that money to you guys, or?
Well, the sales tax and the use tax, when they're collected, they all funnel through the State of Missouri Department of Revenue.
Okay.
So the Department of Revenue collects. As a matter of fact, if voters were to approve this measure, even though they would do so in November, it takes several months for it to really go into effect because the state has an implementation process, a notification process, if you will, to the various companies that need to know, hey, this is the taxing rate in this jurisdiction at this point. So you're right, it really becomes fairly easy for most consumers. They just will see the use tax, again, the same as the current sales tax, but not in addition to, added to their checkout invoice when they go to check out. Now, there are some very small entities that potentially won't collect the tax, but that will make it no different than today. So part of the ballot question talks about this $2,000 and under of online purchases. And really what happens today is if you were to make $1,900 worth of purchases online, you don't have to self-report the tax that would be due to that on your April state tax return. But if you consume over $2,000 worth of merchandise purchased online that is not taxed, then you're supposed to self-report that. And it's a very low number of people throughout the entire state that actually purchase those amounts, from general population. So it really won't have a lot of effect. But when the tax is not collected at the point of sale, then you are required to keep track of it. And again, if you exceed that $2,000 mark, anything above that, you should self-report. But the number of people that will happen to will be countable on one hand.
Mm-hmm.
It's very low.
But the idea is that if I buy a 70-inch flat screen TV for $4,000 from Amazon, that Amazon may charge me the tax.
Correct.
I'm good to go.
Absolutely.
But if I buy it from Joe's flat screen TV company,
Right.
and I don't pay the tax, then I have to,
Then it becomes a self-reporting,
And-
just as it is today.
and that's on state income tax?
Yes, that there's a form that you would fill out whenever you file your state income tax. So the reason to bring it up is because probably most of the people, if not all of the folks watching the show right now that have made purchases online, none of them have ever been required to do that.
That's true. And it's, this is not something that really has much of an impact on the average consumer.
No.
Use taxes are typically paid and collected by local businesses who file a quarterly report with the state of Missouri Department of Revenue, and then the Department of Revenue takes their share and gives the county their share and the city their share, and it gives the library district their share. It gives Boone County Family Resources their share, and so they're really responsible for divvying up those funds that are collected. Where you really start to see the big impact of this, and this is kind of a good visual example for people living in Columbia. Over the last few years, we have seen significant growth in the building of high-rise student apartments in downtown Columbia. And a few weeks ago, we sat down and we sort of tried to estimate what the building permits were on each of these buildings that were built in the last 3 years. And we came to the conclusion that conservatively, that almost $100 million had been spent on building materials. But if you walk into your local appliance store or your local carpeting store and you say, hey, isn't that great that you were able to sell all those appliances and carpeting to these high-rise apartments, they very quickly tell you that none of those products were purchased here in Columbia. Most of the products that were used for the construction of these buildings were shipped in on rail containers, and unfortunately quite a bit of it came in on rail containers from overseas. And so as you look at that $100 million of building materials that were purchased, and you do the math, you realize that Columbia and Boone County missed out on about $3.7 million. And $3.7 million will build a lot of parks, hire a lot of cops, hire a lot of firefighters, and we really feel like, in addition to that, had that money been spent on a local level, it would have supported these local businesses who do so much for our community. But more importantly, having the use tax in place simply levels the playing field, where there's less of an advantage for that developer to buy those products outside the state and outside the country. So that's a very, I think, vivid way to look at the problems with not having a use tax on the books in Columbia. I'm not sure why we waited so long. I think the issue had been discussed in the past. It didn't gain much traction, and so our city and county leaders decided to put it off. But now is the time. I mean, it's the impact. It's very clear that this is a trend that's not going to go away. The appeal of online shopping is not diminishing, and so we need to find a way to address our revenue shortfalls.
And so online shopping is kind of what we're talking about here, but some of what the example you just gave, some of that other kind of purchases would also apply to a use tax, right?
Absolutely.
So if you brought in 500 washing machines, you would have to self-report unless you paid tax on it,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And that's really, because when I looked at the ballot language, that $2,000 number, it does sort of make you pause and say, now, wait a minute, is this, how's this going to affect me? Because again, we're used to just having taxes added on, right? There's always, and tax. So, but really that, as Fred was saying, that really is an issue with some of the bigger issues and players here, not most everyday folks.
There's two layers of complexity in this issue. One is the implementation,
Right.
and the other is enforcement. The implementation is actually quite easy. It's easy to put the tax in force, but enforcing it, relying on people to self-report, relying on companies to self-report, and of course, it's fairly easy to tell when a business is buying products from out of state because all of that stuff is reported in their tax returns and so forth. And so, a quick audit quickly shows us that there is use tax due to a community. But it's messy. We get into the weeds on this, and I think we sort of scratch our heads about, well, how will this be enforced? And I think that for the average consumer, it's still going to be the honor system. And you have an opportunity if you're doing more than $2,000 worth of purchases online. You have an opportunity to self-report with your state income tax return. But if you're a business, it's not quite so. It's not quite so easy. We don't have to rely on the honor system because the state has a pretty good record of the products and services that you're buying.
And so the businesses, so the businesses on Broadway probably like this idea. Some of the other folks, what have you heard from them in terms of the developers or the?
Well, what's really our gauge is what the citizenry think,
Yep.
because they're the ones that are going to be deciding the question and so forth, and the ones that probably will really see the least effect but reap the most benefit. In our annual survey that we did last year, and we do an annual survey every year within the city, and we ask a number of different questions, but in looking at that, over 60% of the respondents said that they were favorable to having a use tax come before them as a question. So, we're hearing that people understand, I think, the issue for the most part. I think there's a little trepidation always because you want to make sure you understand it fully, and as we've talked tonight, there are some layers to this that do make you kind of have a pause for just a second. But again, going back to the fact that most people are not going to notice any difference in their online shopping habits, other than the fact that those that have a nexus back to the state of Missouri already collect the tax. Those that don't will start collecting it, but if they don't, it's still on the honor system, and it's just like it is today.
Mm-hmm.
As far as local businesses, I don't think there's much concern. Most local businesses are already paying a use tax. They will now have to collect an additional 1.75% for the county and an additional 2% for the city. But that's a small price to pay when they think of the benefits of leveling the playing field, making it easier for them, a more fair competition between their hometown brick and mortar business and that online business that they've been competing against for over 20 years now.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose the other, in some ways, there's already been a victory here because it could have gotten even more confusing if only the county was doing this or only the city was doing it, but you guys are doing it together. Mm-hmm. So that's terrific.
Yeah, right. And as I talked about the ballot issue in 2016 for the use tax on the cars and boats and so forth, the city and the county worked together very closely on that one too. And I know we were talking about this earlier, but, you know, I think Commissioner Parry's right. Sometimes the city and the county get a bum rap in the fact that people think, well, they're button heads, they're not working together and so forth. But in reality, we always have been. You know, we're a big family. We have disputes sometimes and things like that. But we're also cognizant enough to know when we're working for the common good. And that's really what it's all about for the city and the county, is working for the common good of our citizenry. And so I think we have a pretty good track record. I think we're even getting better.
Oh, yeah.
And I think really bright things for that relationship are ahead in the future.
We're spending a lot of time at the same table, which I think the communication has dramatically improved, and we do have common goals, and we both are very interested in making our community a better place to live. Columbians are Boone Countyans, and so we have a parallel customer to serve, and so that's something that we've taken very seriously, and I think you'll see more of that coming in the months and years ahead.
And the citizens benefit from the efficiencies that brings forward too. So
Yes.
it's a good thing.
That's good. So anything to add about the use tax, to sum it up? To what's our tweet about the use tax?
Well, one of our concerns, I think, is this is a very complex issue, and we are fortunate in Columbia and Boone County to have a county clerk that likes to send the ballot question out in advance for people to see. That is a real benefit, and we're lucky to have 2 daily newspapers in this market that cover the issues pretty well. And so I would just encourage people to take the opportunity to educate themselves and try to think of the bigger picture, and that in the grand scheme of things, this is not a significant increase in price or expense for consumers in Columbia and Boone County, and that most small businesses have been paying this state use tax for many, many years.
And I would echo that. We just are asking people to educate themselves, become an engaged citizen, educate themselves on the measure. You can go to the Boone County website at showmeboone.com, City of Columbia's website at como.gov, and there's information out there on both of the websites. And as Fred mentioned, many of the media outlets, of course, will cover this, especially as we get a couple weeks out from the ballot issue. So educate yourself, inform yourself, and then vote.
And again, there's only one issue, but I mean it's one issue, in some cases 2 propositions.
One issue, 2 questions.
2 questions, right. All right, well, that's...
And we make it really easy because we want you to say yes to both.
Yeah, and we won't talk about what happens if it passes in the county but not in the city. We'll save that for another show, perhaps, right?
There you go. That's
Yeah.
a good idea.
So, all right, well, that's all the time we have. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to Fred and to Stephen, and we'll see you next time.